Coming along. Great. Good afternoon, everybody, and welcome to yet another Facebook Live session. I'm Guy Harvey, and today our topic is going to be talking about the food web and food chains. But specifically, we're going to talk about coral reef food webs and food chains because that's where we live. After all, we're in the Caribbean, and so we're most familiar with the animals around us here. And you've seen this before, but I'm going to start out by using this turtle scene with the hawksbill and the other reef fish, quite a large variety of reef fish, as a good example of just part of the coral reef food web. Now what we got here is a hawksbill turtle that's feeding on a sponge, and though it's not, it's probably halfway up the food web, we do have introduced in here some of the lower animals in the food web of a coral reef situation. We've got fish that are eating on the primary producers, which are like phytoplankton and therefore zooplankton as well. And these little plankton fish here, the creel fish, creel wrasse will do that. Also the sergeant majors, I'm working on them here too. They also eat a lot of plankton, and that's one of the basic building blocks, as Jessica will show you later, of the coral reef food web. Down the bottom, we've got different types of coral. There's some algae, which of course are a primary producer because they use photosynthesis to generate sugars, which is food. Also remember that corals are not just animals. They have a portion of their build up, their makeup, which is actually a plant. They have a symbiotic relationship with algae, again a primary producer, that takes sunlight and turns it into sugars, nutritious food for themselves and of course for the corals. They also give the color to the corals, which is pretty interesting.
So we're just going to...
and Jessica's now going to start to talk about a little bit about the program for the rest of the show. Jump in, Jess.
Hi, everybody. It's me, Jess Harvey, or Traveling Jess Harvey, as some of you may know. It's a pleasure to be here with you this afternoon. Thank you so much for signing in to those who have. And this is a part of our Facebook Live series that we've been running for the last couple weeks now. And so thank you very much for tuning in. This is our first afternoon session, so we hope you've had a very hearty lunch, very productive day, are safe. And as Dad mentioned, we are going to be talking about today's food web and food pyramids, what the differences are, what components make up that food pyramid, and talk about the various animals.
Right, in that case, let me get the...
so I just want to say, if you've missed the Facebook sessions before, you can go back onto the Guy Harvey Facebook page and see them all. You don't have to worry about missing any one. And you can go back and also ask questions on the previous ones, and we will do our best to go through the Facebook Live session today to answer your questions. So please feel free to write comments or questions in the Facebook Live. I'm going to be feeding them to Dad, and so you guys can be a part of the interactive discussion. This component is also based off of an educational video we have on Guy Harvey website. So hopefully you've seen all of it. If not, you can go during or afterwards to see the food web educational video. And amazingly, we are now featured on Discovery Education as of today. So just want to point that out. So if teachers and students who are familiar or logged into Discovery Education, you can find our content as well. Easiest way is to search for Guy Harvey in the search bar. But yeah, we have a lot of components on. So without further ado, I'm just going to see who signed in and say hello to everybody.
Let's get some feedback.
So hello, Douglas. Valerie's parents are signed on. Very nice to meet you.
In the frame? Can everybody see this?
Yes, I'm going to back up a little bit so that people can see.
I can back up.
Hi, Charles. Hi, Govitz from Jacksonville, Florida. Very nice to have you guys on. Charles, thank you from Orlando. As per recommendation, he says he's watched some of the Guy Harvey specials on Amazon. Thank you so much. Good. So I'm going to back up so that you guys can see the whole frame.
Easier for me to move.
Well, it's okay. I got it.
All right, great.
I got it.
Let's get going here. So we'll start again with the primary producers. These are the basic building blocks of of the food web itself. The sunlight is obviously the key to everything. Anybody who watches any documentary about marine life will know that the sun is everything. It's just most of the ocean is actually dark, and so it doesn't have the benefit of sunlight. But those animals and plants that live within the effect of sunlight are severely affected by it and its growth. So here we have a lot of different types of seagrass, all in shallow water, because that's where the sunlight is brightest. And that's where corals are too, because they depend on sunlight. You don't get really corals growing very well below 100 feet in the open ocean. So we got fish that eat the seagrasses, like parrotfish, and also the turtle that I was just, well, over there is a green sea turtle. Here's one of the secondary level consumers, the green turtle, and we have a lot of those around here. And of course, this is a characterization of blue tangs, which are also herbivorous fish, eating algae off the back of a turtle. So the turtle also provides a substrate for primary production in growth of algae.
So would you say that that's a good example of how a food web could provide
Exactly right.
those links? Can you explain briefly what the difference is between a food web and a food pyramid?
Well, a food pyramid, as you show here, this is graphically shown, is how the different levels, one feeds off the level below it to the very top. We were going to get into that later. But so you get the primary producers, secondary consumers that eat the primary producers, and it goes up to tertiary, and finally the apex predator. It's the same in the open ocean, but with different structure. And at every change of producer, there is a transfer of energy, but also a more consequential loss of energy. And so in terms of the transfer of energy, this is basically starting with sunlight. From grass to shark will be actually pretty minimal when it gets up to the shark. But there is that transfer of energy. A lot of the consumed energy, of course, gets metabolized, and so is used up in the natural life of the animal, and so it's lost. It goes back to things like fish farming, where if you're trying to farm fish out of grain or other fish or whatever, the transfer of energy is a very important consideration in the success of how you organize that as a derivation of transfers of energy. So your food conversion ratios become a very important part of measuring how successful it will be. And of course, nature has worked that out anyway. We're trying to, in fish farms, trying to superimpose nature in an artificial environment, and it doesn't always work. So going back to the structure here, the corals, not only do they provide shelter, but they also provide food. Not many animals eat coral. Some parrotfish do. They digest the cell membranes, the tissue off the coral, and then they make a lot of sand, as we discussed. They crap out the sand. But many other fish will take their turns, and some fish will eat these guys, like the bigger groupers, snappers, and then at the very end you got the top predators, which are like barracudas and sharks on the reef. Now, this is very simplified. You have to understand that in terms of protecting species, this is where the whole thing can unravel, because if you take out all your parrotfish and then superimpose restrictions on fishing for parrotfish or fishing for doctorfish or fishing for tangs, your herbivores, it may not necessarily work, because the whole system has been affected by the removal of these fish. It's not just the physical absence of those fish that upsets the balance, the whole habitat is upset. And so, and of course, this has become a primary issue nowadays, and we'll get into introduction of other species. But in terms of trying to fix it, it's much better in the long run to protect an area, a large area, as large as possible, rather than protect an individual species. So overfishing typically happens to species like groupers and snappers and guys like this. And of course, here in Cayman and Little Cayman, the protection of the Nassau grouper in particular has really worked very well indeed. But also, they're protecting the actual spag sites, the spawning aggregation sites, so all species within that area are protected from fishing, not just the desirable, highly commercially valuable fish like groupers and snappers. So what another thing that has affected food webs really badly, can anybody guess?
Well, we actually had this question earlier from, I'm going to try and find it. Wow. Hello, everybody. There's a lot of people who've signed in. So just want to say a quick hello to the new comers. Really appreciate you signing on. One question, I can't find it at the moment, but I know it was on invasive species. Someone was asking how invasive species are a part of it. But just want to give, because we've had a lot more people sign on recently, and so I just want to kind of introduce everybody to the concept of what we're talking about today. We're talking about food webs and food pyramids, what the components that make up a coral reef food pyramid as we've got described today. And so if you don't worry if you missed the beginning, we're going to post at the end of this so that you can see the whole discussion afterwards, but please keep the comments in, and hello to everybody who's signed in from all over. So go ahead, Dad, and talk about
we're talking about destruction of reef habitat primarily through overfishing, habitat loss, especially coral reef siltation is a big issue. Because why? Because we talked about sunlight and the importance of sunlight early on. And if you prevent sunlight reaching seagrasses and coral reefs, they both die. So all of these factors are significant in terms of better management. But let's talk about an introduced perturbation, and we call these invasive species. And of course, here's the lionfish. I think some of you...
it was Michael Hammond. Thanks, Michael, for your question. He was asking, are there any specific invasive species that have disrupted the food web? And if so, what's being done?
So this is a major disruptor. I love these charts, Jessica, because you really actually, you just captioned everything in here for me. They're ecologically dangerous because they're a medium reef predator. They eat everything. So they don't really have a position in a food web or a food chain, except they're a dominant introduced predator. So they're really upsetting everything by eating anything that can go down their throat. The only limiting factor is that they don't grow very big, but they still eat a lot of small fish. They come from the Indian Ocean, Pacific Ocean, and the only check on their expansion, so to speak, has been us through culling programs. The real problem is that they produce so many eggs, millions of eggs a year, 30,000 eggs every 4 days, and there are no predators of lionfish to speak of. We are seeing signs here in Little Cayman in particular of lionfish being eaten by nurse sharks and by some of the medium reef predators we talked about, the Nassau groupers. Just for example, when we go up to Little Cayman to look at the spawning of the groupers, they do it in the same place, same time every year. And in that area, in the last 3 or 4 years, I haven't seen a single lionfish anywhere near that area. So they're all getting eaten, I suspect, by the Nassau grouper.
But so just to talk about what's being done, so there are cull operations happening to help with their removal, because as you so described, the animals that they're eating are mostly in this section.
Right.
And
lower section, small animals.
Right. And so
juveniles of many stages,
Exactly. And so can you just talk about if you were to take out this section, how would that affect this?
Well, you take out any section and you can see that the pyramid is going to miss some the basic building blocks, and it can collapse. The effects of lionfish have been so recent and modern, only the last 7 or 8 years, to be honest with you, that we haven't been able to measure some of the more drastic effects. But over a long term, if you have the time and the effort to measure the populations of all these other fish that could be affected, I'm sure that empirically it could be shown. But we wait for a natural predator to evolve in 100 years or 1,000 years to take care of the lionfish? Because we're never going to get rid of them. There are too many. In the same way that here we have culled another invasive species, the green iguana, very effectively, but it's been financed, and so at great cost. But it does work. How can we finance the removal of lionfish? It's just too big a problem.
Oh wow! Jason said that he saw a bull shark eat a lionfish on his last dive. That's really interesting.
Catch it by itself and eat it, that'd be very cool. So there are these problems, but for decades before lionfish ever came, we've been removing the groupers, we've been taking out the parrotfish. These little guys get to stay because they are small and they're hardly worth catching, but in many trap fisheries in the Caribbean, and these are indiscriminate fishing methods, you get all different stages of the whole food pyramid and the food web. And the destruction that's been brought on coral reefs over the last 50, 60 years has been immense. So what's the answer? The answer is marine parks, more and more marine parks.
Mm-hmm. So just to kind of clarify, food webs are is a web that shows the Dad's dying to paint, as you can see. Doesn't sit idly in times like this. So the food webs is a map that outlines the connectivity between certain animals. So just as Dad demonstrated earlier, you have, where's that green turtle?
I'm getting bored, so I'm going to go back to the
No, Dad! Come on!
I just want to show you what I was working on last time, and I nearly got it finished. So anyway, keep going.
Oh Lord. Anyway, so just talking about the food webs. If you were to draw a picture of algae, you can draw a line to the blue tangs and draw a line to the turtles, which would draw a line back to the algae and show their connectivity.
Right.
Whereas this actually describes the order in which things feed upon each other. And so can you explain, Dad, why it is shaped the way it is? Why is it so much bigger on the bottom than it is on the top?
The biomass of the lower levels is much, much greater. So the biomass of plants on the seafloor, seagrasses and algae, will be vast, immeasurable, compared to the biomass of the secondary consumers, which is theoretically calculable, measurable. And of course the tertiary consumers, we know from historical catch records, if they're accurate, just how many fish got taken out of different areas. But again, the volume is reduced because, as I said earlier, the transfer of energy is diminished. You're not going to get the same amount of energy going from one level to the next. There's reduction of energy through metabolism, and that goes up decreasingly. So the very top predators have a very small part of the primary production. Except in an animal, and I love these guys, the whale sharks kind of defeat the whole food pyramid exercise because they are a very large predator that primarily feeds on plankton. And most of that plankton is built up of phytoplankton, which is plant material, not animal material. They're very opportunistic. They eat a lot of fish eggs, small fish, and stuff like that when they can. But here is theoretically an apex predator feeding directly on a primary producer.
Right. But you can talk about that in the sense that part of the shape of it is about abundance of the actual species itself, correct?
Well,
you're going to get
I'm talking about
biomass. Yeah. So if you look at a shark has much more young compared to the prey in which it eats, right? So it has.
What do you mean?
As in, it doesn't. Oh, sorry if I'm shaking. How do I explain this? So, even though they're apex predators at the top, they also don't produce as much young as, say, the tertiary consumers or the secondary consumers. Isn't that part of the reason that is also shaped the way it is?
Because it would be imbalanced if you had too many predators and not enough animals in the lower levels.
Right.
These guys would run out of food. That's
right.
why it's a balance.
Exactly. So that's.
What are you going to do with your building blocks over here?
I'm going to explain that at the end. Anyway, so I'm going to get through some of these. Hi, Carl, who's watching. And Yes, Stephanie, he did paint that. There's a lot of paintings that he's done throughout these Facebook sessions. So if anyone missed any of the Facebook sessions, you can look it up. We talked about makos. We talked about ocean, was it pelagic species and open ocean stuff.
Well, while you're here, let me just bring in the open ocean food chain, because here you go. You got sailfish feeding on sardines. It's a very short chain. Because you got the the primary producer would have been plankton. That's what these herrings eat, these sardines. This is a Mexican sardine, and they grow only to about a foot long. They have a very short lifespan, probably 2 or 3 years, and the sailfish eat the hell out of these guys. And so and then on top of this would be the mako shark. So you only got 4 different levels in this oceanic food chain. The inshore coral reef food web food chain is just so much more involved, and there's links left and right to different animals, all of which depend on each other to a greater or lesser extent. So 2 completely different systems, but I just want to show you mostly about the coral reef food web, because it is so it's much more obvious to us because we live in a small Caribbean island, and we're heavily dependent on the health of the coral reef food web compared to the oceanic food web. And there's a lot more talking points.
So just to bring in a couple of questions here from the public, Glenn says, what impact, if any, has the increase in general shark populations had on the billfish population?
I can't really answer that right now, because the main predatory sharks, the billfish, have all been, they've been caught, a lot of them, so we don't know. But a lot of different levels in the open ocean have been heavily fished, and so many of them are in a severely depleted state right now. We can maybe talk about that in another episode of Facebook Live, when we got an open ocean system to talk about. Yep.
Steve's also watching. Hi, Steve. We have, so thank you to all those who choose to eat, as we talked about, invasive species like lionfish. Certainly the greener choice of seafood to eat, as opposed to things like the primary consumers or the tertiary consumers who have a major role on our reefs, which is, as this diagram so describes, if you take out a certain section of this pyramid too greatly, it will cause it to collapse. So here in many places there are closed seasons for the commercially desirable species like groupers and snappers, which is all very well. We have to go back again to their life history. The life history of the lower levels are typically much faster turnover. They may not live very long, a year or 2 years. Other fish, as you get higher up the ladder, will live much longer life, and the groupers and snappers, as we know, we studied this guy very, very well here for the last 2 decades, and they don't mature for 6 or 7 years, and so the whole issue of their ability to absorb fishing pressure is a real issue here. And although we have closed seasons and slot sizes, in my opinion, the number of Nassau groupers that one can catch here legally outside of spawning season is far too high. Why? Because this fish takes so long to get to a certain size. So can you just shed some light on what's not seen in this diagram are the decomposers at each level?
Of course. Doesn't happen very often nowadays, but when these fish do eventually die of old age, they fall to the bottom, and there's a whole raft of another layer of animals that will consume and digest the decomposing bodies. It's just hard to depict microbes and bottom-living crustaceans that will take care of the dead.
Right.
And of course, that's one of the jobs of sharks too, on a more macro scale. If there is a sick grouper or an injured grouper or whatever, or parrotfish, then they are the cleanup crew, and they'll be glad to take advantage of that situation. But again, it doesn't happen very often, and so the normal feeding for any kind of top predator is few and far between.
So we have another question here. From Let's Eat? What happens when you do remove apex predators?
Well, there's no controls basically on all the levels below it. So theoretically, if we didn't fish for these guys and the snappers, they'd be all over the place, and they would actually be eating all the lower levels too. So at some point, the whole thing would re-gauge itself, recalibrate itself, and things will change. The nature is not static; it's very dynamic, and thing is, these things are always in constant motion.
Mm-hmm. But if there was a scenario where apex predators were removed off of the face of the planet tomorrow,
you
what would
have
happen?
them all go. But for example, you take out all the striped bass in the Chesapeake Bay, it caused big problems with all the levels below that. You take out all the sharks, the mobula rays all increased, and they ate all the clams and scallops and stuff like that. And we know because it affects fisheries, and people only shout and scream and squeal if it affects their livelihood. That's how we hear about most of these perturbations.
Mm-hmm. So I'm just going through this.
And so, any other questions?
Well, we have quite a few. So,
yep.
I'm not going to attempt an old acre, Elkno Old Acre. I'm so sorry if I pronounce your name incorrectly. He says, "Hello, Sir Harvey. Your dad was my first commanding officer, and I was proud to serve with him and you."
How's it going?
Wow, that is amazing. Captain Rusk, and how do you feel about the Florida issues with relation to red snapper fishery? I think we need something more specific.
Yeah, the red snapper fishery is of course largely a political issue. The fishery regulations the whole thing needs to be better managed, in my opinion. It'll come eventually.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
Okay.
There are lots of red snappers.
Yes. So a lot of people just saying thank you so much and they've met you or seen you at SeaWorld or NCL.
Yeah. Well, we miss everybody too, but guess what? It's all going to come back, and as long as you do our part, everybody has to do their part. Social distancing, minimizing travel, wearing a mask if you have one. I haven't left this room in 35 days, believe it or not.
As you could probably tell.
I'm missing the sun, I'm missing my boat, missing fishing, missing diving. But we'll get through this, and we'll be back theoretically into some of the other programs that we used to do. And in the meantime, be safe out there, be responsible, and keep yourselves busy, be productive, and try painting more. I'm sorry I didn't paint more on this one. But thank you very much, guys.
So one of the things that I wanted to chat about too is that from this discussion, although brief, and we've kind of touched on different food webs in different places. So apologies if it became a little bit bouncy, but I encourage you to revisit the trophic pyramid video on guyharvey.com to see the animations that go with describing what happens as you move up or down the pyramid and how they're all connected. And for kids or families, a fun activity to do is to build your own trophic pyramid at home. So you can you can do one on coral reefs, you can do one on open ocean, you can even try and be creative with relation to how would you draw a pyramid with whale sharks, as Dad described. But I'm going to show you one of the activities you can do. Excuse the jump. But you can do this cool trophic pyramid. It's so much fun. So if you, the colors are according to the different levels. And so if you are interested in learning about this or how to set this up, please email us at guyharvey.com on the contact sheet, and we'll introduce you to the game. But it's a lot of fun, and you basically have different cards that tell you what happens or give you instructions on how to play, how to move the box according to what scenario you're given. And so, yeah, it's a lot of fun. But we hope you'll try to do your own at home. Please post them if you do them. And thank you for joining us. And we'll be back here on Saturday at 11 Eastern Standard Time to talk about our next documentary, which I'm trying to find the schedule here. Hold on. I'll find the schedule. So we are going to be talking about In the Footsteps of Hemingway. So that'll be a lot of fun, and traveling through Cuba, and you can actually see more of the coral reef landscape in terms of components that make up a coral reef or seascape. Sorry, through that documentary as well. And if anybody likes The Old Man and the Sea, definitely a documentary to watch. It's Dad's biggest inspiration. But thank you very much, everybody. Have fun. Enjoy the rest of your week, and we'll see you on Saturday. Say bye, Dad.
Take care, guys. Be safe.